Have you ever had that moment when you discovered that the person you trusted most at work was plotting something behind your back? That feeling like the ground disappeared from under your feet when you realized your kindness was being used as a weapon against you? If you've been through this, prepare to discover something that will completely change your perspective on workplace betrayals. The mechanic had seen many rainy afternoons at the gas station, but that particular Thursday felt different when he spotted the new attendant waiting for the bus under the inadequate shelter. Water dripped from the small roof, and her frustration was evident as she checked her phone repeatedly, probably calculating how late she'd be getting home. Without hesitation, he approached her with the simple offer of a ride, the kind of gesture that speaks to fundamental human decency. His work boots splashed through puddles as he walked toward her, keys already in hand. The confidence in his step came from years of helping others without expecting anything in return. It's fascinating how genuine kindness often emerges in the most ordinary moments. That simple act of offering shelter from the storm would soon teach him a profound lesson about trust in professional environments. During the drive home, something magical seemed to happen between them, or so he thought. She laughed genuinely at his stories about stubborn car engines and difficult customers, her eyes lighting up with each anecdote he shared about life at the garage. "Men like you are becoming extinct," she said with what appeared to be sincere admiration, a comment that made his chest swell with quiet pride. The conversation flowed naturally, like old friends reconnecting after years apart, and when she asked for his number, it felt like the most natural progression in the world. He gave it gladly, already imagining future conversations and perhaps something more meaningful developing between them. The rain had stopped by the time they reached her street, but the warmth of their connection seemed to linger in the car. Little did he know that this moment of apparent genuine connection would soon become a source of deep disappointment. In the following days, her behavior at the gas station shifted in ways that fed his growing optimism about their budding relationship. She began bringing him coffee in the mornings, always with that bright smile that seemed reserved just for him, and made sure to greet him first among all the colleagues. The other workers quickly noticed this special attention and started their good-natured teasing about the gas station couple, creating an atmosphere of playful camaraderie around their apparent romance. He found himself looking forward to each workday with renewed enthusiasm, checking his appearance in the mirror a little longer each morning. The simple gesture of shared coffee became a daily ritual that anchored his hopes for something beautiful emerging from their professional environment. Yet sometimes the most promising beginnings can mask the most painful endings, and what appears to be loyalty might actually be something entirely different. But we'll explore that delicate balance between genuine connection and calculated manipulation in our next reflection. 3 days after that fateful rainy afternoon, social media delivered its crushing revelation with the cold efficiency of a digital executioner. He was scrolling through Instagram during his lunch break when the image appeared on his screen like a slap across the face. Her lips pressed against another man's, with the caption "Meu homem" boldly displayed beneath. The location tag showed his family's own garage, the very place where all his colleagues and relatives knew about his growing feelings for her. His thumb hovered over the screen as the full implications crashed over him like a wave of ice water. She hadn't just moved on quickly. She had been playing a calculated game while accepting his kindness and coffee rituals. The betrayal cut deeper because it happened in his professional space, where trust and lealtad should have provided some protection. The worst part wasn't just the deception. It was realizing how thoroughly he had misread every signal, every smile, every shared moment. The man in the photo turned out to be his own cousin, someone who knew exactly how the mechanic felt about the new attendant, which added layers of family betrayal to the professional disappointment. This revelation transformed what might have been a simple romantic misunderstanding into something far more complex and painful. He stared at the image until his eyes began to water, though whether from emotion or from staring at the bright screen, he couldn't tell. The garage, once his sanctuary of honest work and family tradition, now felt contaminated by this triangle of deception. Every tool, every familiar corner, every shared family joke would now carry the memory of this moment. His cousin had not only pursued the woman he cared about, but had done so in the very space that represented their family's legacy and his professional identity. The intersection of personal and professional betrayal created a wound that would take far longer to heal than any physical injury. His response to this discovery revealed the kind of quiet dignity that emerges from deep emotional maturity and hard-won wisdom about human nature. Rather than creating drama or confronting either party immediately, he simply closed the app, put his phone away, and returned to his tools with deliberate calm. He spent the rest of his shift cleaning each wrench and screwdriver with unusual attention to detail, the methodical work serving as meditation and emotional processing. His colleagues noticed his silence but respected it, understanding that sometimes a man needs space to work through his thoughts. When closing time arrived, he completed his final tasks with the same professional care he always demonstrated, refusing to let personal disappointment affect his work standards. This reaction spoke to a deeper understanding of how to maintain one's integrity when others choose the path of deception. The true measure of character often reveals itself not in how we celebrate, but in how we handle betrayal and disappointment. The next morning brought the inevitable confrontation, though it unfolded with far more subtlety than most workplace dramas. She approached him with that same bright smile, apparently confident that her social media post had gone unnoticed, and tried to initiate their usual playful banter. "Fico com ciúmes, eh?" she asked with a laugh, testing the waters to see if he had discovered her deception. His response was swift and cutting without being cruel. "Você gosta mesmo é de atalho, né?" The words carried layers of meaning, acknowledging her preference for taking shortcuts rather than building genuine connections, and his newfound understanding of her true character. She fell silent, perhaps recognizing that her game had been exposed with surgical precision. The other workers continued their morning routines, unaware that they had just witnessed a masterclass in how to address betrayal with dignity rather than drama. 1 month later, when the cousin predictably disappeared and she attempted to rekindle their connection, his final response became legendary among his colleagues. "Carona agora, só com GPS emocional." It was the perfect metaphor for someone who had learned to navigate relationships with the wisdom gained from experience, choosing to trust his internal guidance system rather than external appearances. The afternoon rain had been relentless, turning the gas station's parking lot into a mirror of gray clouds and neon reflections. She stood under the inadequate shelter, watching buses pass by completely full, her frustration mounting with each soaked minute that ticked away. Her first week at the new job had been challenging enough, without having to deal with the city's unreliable public transportation system during a downpour. When the mechanic approached with his simple offer of a ride, she saw not just an escape from the rain, but an opportunity that her calculating mind immediately began to assess. His genuine concern for her comfort was written plainly across his weathered face, the kind of authentic kindness that she had learned to recognize and, unfortunately, exploit. The confidence in his gesture spoke of a man accustomed to helping others without ulterior motives. In that moment, she made a decision that would later reveal the stark difference between accepting help and manipulating generosity. During the drive to her neighborhood, she deployed every weapon in her considerable arsenal of charm and manipulation. Her laughter at his stories was perfectly timed, neither too eager nor too restrained, crafted to make him feel both entertaining and appreciated. "Men like you are becoming extinct," she told him, knowing instinctively that this particular compliment would resonate with someone who clearly valued traditional concepts of chivalry and decency. She watched his chest swell with quiet pride, mentally cataloging this reaction for future use. The conversation flowed exactly as she intended, with her asking just the right questions to make him feel heard and valued. When she requested his number, it was with the practiced ease of someone who understood that timing and delivery were everything in the art of manipulation. The ambient professional environment of their workplace provided the perfect cover for what she was already planning. What he interpreted as genuine connection was, for her, simply the opening moves in a much more complex game. In the days that followed, she implemented her strategy with the precision of a master chess player, each move calculated to build his investment while keeping her own options open. The morning coffee ritual wasn't born from affection, but from understanding that small, consistent gestures create powerful emotional bonds in workplace settings. She made sure to greet him first each day, establishing a visible pattern that would make their connection obvious to all their colleagues. The teasing from other workers about the gas station couple served her purposes perfectly, creating social pressure that would make him more committed to pursuing her. She observed his increased attention to his appearance, his obvious excitement about their daily interactions, and filed away each detail as confirmation of her growing influence. The environment of trust and lealtad that characterized their professional space made her manipulations easier, as genuine people rarely suspect calculated deception. Yet even as she played this game, another opportunity was presenting itself, one that would prove far more appealing than the patient mechanic with his steady paycheck and predictable routine. The cousin represented everything the mechanic wasn't: flashy, impulsive, and immediately available for the kind of intense romance that feeds on drama rather than stability. When he appeared at the family garage, she recognized him immediately as the type of man who would provide the excitement and social status she craved. The fact that he was related to the mechanic only added to the appeal. It was a shortcut to integration into a family business, and shortcuts had always been her preferred method of advancement. She began orchestrating encounters with the cousin while maintaining her performance with the mechanic, a delicate balancing act that required careful timing and absolute confidence in her ability to compartmentalize. The garage environment, with its casual atmosphere and family dynamics, provided the perfect setting for her to assess both options while keeping either man from fully understanding the situation. Her decision to post the photo wasn't accidental. It was a calculated announcement designed to close one door while opening another. The location tag at the family garage was particularly cruel, ensuring that everyone in their professional environment would witness the mechanic's humiliation. The morning after the photo went live, she approached the mechanic with the same confidence that had carried her through weeks of deception. She had miscalculated his awareness and underestimated his emotional intelligence, assumptions that would prove costly in the coming conversation. "Fiku cum ciúmes, she asked, still believing she could maintain control of the narrative and perhaps even keep him as a backup option. His response, "Você gosta mesmo é de atalho, né?" hit her like a physical blow, exposing not just her tactics but her entire approach to relationships and professional interactions. In that moment, she realized that her careful manipulation had been transparent to him, probably for longer than she had imagined. The other workers continued their routines, unaware that they were witnessing the unmasking of someone who had treated their workplace like a personal hunting ground. The frustration and disappointment she had caused were now reflecting back on her, creating a professional environment where her reputation would be forever marked by this incident. The cousin's predictable disappearance a month later left her exactly where sophisticated manipulators often find themselves: alone and exposed, with burned bridges and a damaged reputation in her professional environment. Her attempt to rekindle something with the mechanic revealed the depth of her miscalculation and her fundamental misunderstanding of human nature. She had assumed that his kindness indicated weakness, that his steady character meant he would always be available as a fallback option. The workplace that had once seemed like fertile ground for her manipulations now felt hostile, filled with colleagues who had witnessed her behavior and drawn their own conclusions. When she tried to approach him again, his response about needing GPS emotional for future rides became an instant classic among the garage workers. It perfectly captured the kind of wisdom that comes from learning to navigate relationships with internal guidance rather than external appearance. The aprendizado she provided wasn't intentional, but it was profound. Some people view kindness as weakness to exploit, while others understand it as strength to be respected. Her story serves as a cautionary tale about the difference between strategic thinking and manipulative behavior in professional environments. While ambition and social intelligence are valuable traits, using them to exploit others' genuine feelings inevitably leads to isolation and reputation damage. The gas station and garage workers had witnessed firsthand how someone could take advantage of their culture of mutual support and trust, and they would be more cautious in the future. She had succeeded in teaching everyone around her about the importance of emotional boundaries and the value of authentic relationships over calculated connections. The irony was that her manipulative skills, which she had considered her greatest assets, had ultimately become the tools of her own professional and personal downfall. In environments where lealtad and genuine connection are valued, Those who practice deception will always find themselves on the outside, looking in. The mechanic's final words to her weren't just a rejection. They were a declaration of independence from people who view others as shortcuts to their own goals. Family businesses carry within them an unspoken code of loyalty that transcends simple professional relationships, creating bonds that should theoretically be unbreakable. The cousin had grown up in the shadow of the garage, spending summers learning to change oil and rotate tires alongside the mechanic, sharing the kind of childhood memories that forge lifelong connections. He knew every story, every dream, every disappointment that had shaped his relative's life, including the growing excitement about the new gas station attendant. When family members work together, personal confidences become shared treasures, protected by blood ties and mutual respect. The garage represented more than just a business. It was a legacy built on trust, where family secrets were supposed to remain sacred. Yet sometimes the people closest to us possess the most dangerous weapons: intimate knowledge of our vulnerabilities and unlimited access to our professional spaces. The cousin's betrayal would prove that proximity to someone's dreams can become the perfect opportunity to steal them. He had listened patiently as the mechanic described each interaction with the attendant, offering encouraging nods and brotherly advice while internally calculating his own opportunities. The cousin possessed a different kind of confidence, flashier, more immediate, built on charm rather than character, and he recognized that these qualities often appealed to people seeking excitement over stability. While the mechanic was building something genuine through daily coffee rituals and respectful courtship, the cousin was planning a more direct approach that would leverage his insider knowledge. He knew exactly when the mechanic would be working late, which days he took lunch breaks, and how to time his own appearances at the gas station for maximum impact. The family garage became his strategic headquarters, a place where he could casually mention his single status and financial prospects, while appearing to visit for legitimate business reasons. His betrayal wasn't impulsive. It was calculated, methodical, and designed to exploit every piece of confidential information he had gathered. The environment of trust that had made the mechanic vulnerable also provided the cousin with the perfect cover for his deception. What made this betrayal particularly devastating was how the cousin used the family garage itself as the stage for his conquest, turning a sacred professional space into the scene of intimate humiliation. He knew that taking the photo in that location would ensure maximum visibility among all the people who mattered in the mechanic's professional and personal life. The garage walls had witnessed decades of family celebrations, business achievements, and personal milestones. Now they would forever hold the memory of this calculated cruelty. Every family gathering, every shared meal, every future business discussion would carry the undercurrent of this betrayal. The cousin had weaponized their shared history and professional environment, turning the mechanic's openness and trust into tools for his own gratification. The leal dad that should have protected family confidences became the very mechanism through which those confidences were violated. But what drives someone to destroy the trust of those closest to them, and how do such actions ultimately reshape the entire family dynamic? These questions would soon prove more complex than anyone anticipated. The psychology behind his actions reveals a darker truth about competitive dynamics within family businesses, and how envy can masquerade as brotherly support. For years, the cousin had watched the mechanic build respect and admiration among their relatives and community. His steady character, earning the kind of genuine appreciation that flashier personalities often struggle to achieve. The attendant represented more than just a romantic interest. She was a symbol of everything the cousin felt he deserved, but had never quite been able to claim through his own efforts. His betrayal was an attempt to prove that charm and immediate gratification could triumph over patience and genuine character, a thesis he was eager to test in their shared professional environment. The frustration of always being compared unfavorably to his more grounded cousin had been building for years, and this situation provided the perfect opportunity for revenge disguised as romantic pursuit. He convinced himself that he was simply being more direct and honest about his intentions, when in reality, he was committing one of the deepest violations possible in family business relationships. The garage, which had always been neutral territory where both men could work and succeed, became a battlefield where trust would be the primary casualty. The aftermath of the photo reveal exposed not just the cousin's character, but the fragile nature of trust in professional environments where personal and business relationships intersect. Family members who had known both men since childhood were forced to choose sides, creating divisions that would affect business operations and holiday gatherings for years to come. The cousin had assumed that his actions would be seen as bold and decisive, but instead they were recognized as manipulative and disloyal by everyone who witnessed them. His temporary victory in winning the attendants' attention came at the cost of his reputation within the family business and his standing in the broader professional community. The garage workers, who had initially teased about the gas station couple, now found themselves witnesses to a much more serious breach of family and professional ethics. The environment that had once fostered collaboration and mutual support became tense and divided, with conversations stopping when either cousin entered the room. The apprendizado that emerged from this situation was painful, but necessary. Even blood relationships don't guarantee ethical behavior in professional settings. His rapid disappearance from the attendant's life after achieving his conquest revealed the hollow nature of his entire pursuit and exposed his true motivations to everyone involved. The cousin had never been interested in building something meaningful. He had simply wanted to prove he could take what his relative valued most, a victory that lost all meaning once it was achieved. The attendant, who had chosen excitement over stability, found herself abandoned by someone who had no capacity for genuine connection or long-term commitment. Meanwhile, the mechanic's dignified response to the entire situation earned him even greater respect from family members and colleagues who witnessed his character under pressure. The cousin's absence from family gatherings and business meetings spoke volumes about his shame and inability to face the consequences of his actions. His professional relationships within the family business were permanently damaged, as trust once broken in such circumstances can never be fully restored. The garage continued to operate, but with a new understanding among all family members about the importance of maintaining boundaries between personal desires and professional obligations. The long-term consequences of his betrayal extended far beyond the immediate romantic drama, fundamentally altering how the family business would handle personal relationships and confidential information in the future. New policies were quietly implemented about discussing personal matters in professional settings, and family members became more cautious about sharing vulnerabilities with relatives who worked in the business. The cousin had succeeded in winning a brief romantic encounter, but had lost something far more valuable: his place in a family legacy and the respect of people who had known him since childhood. His story became a cautionary tale told in whispers around the garage, a reminder of how quickly someone can destroy decades of family trust for temporary gratification. The mechanic, meanwhile, emerged from the experience with enhanced wisdom about human nature and stronger bonds with the family members who had supported him through the crisis. The garage walls, which had witnessed the betrayal, also witnessed the mechanic's growth and the family's eventual healing around the values of genuine loyalty and professional integrity. Sometimes the most painful lessons about confianza and betrayal come from those closest to us, but they also provide the strongest foundation for future wisdom and more authentic relationships. The moment she posted that photo with the mechanic's cousin, she believed she was making a power move that would secure her position, while keeping all her options open for future advancement. Her experience in previous workplaces had taught her that romantic drama often created opportunities for those clever enough to navigate the chaos, and she had grown confident in her ability to emerge from any situation with enhanced status. The gas station and garage environment had seemed like perfect hunting grounds, a close-knit community where personal relationships intertwined with professional ones, creating multiple pathways for influence and manipulation. She had observed how genuine connections formed in this workplace, how colleagues supported each other through difficulties, and how trust flowed freely among people who worked side by side every day. What she failed to understand was that these very qualities that made the environment appealing also made it dangerous for those who chose to exploit rather than contribute. The lealtad and mutual respect she had witnessed weren't weaknesses to be exploited, but strengths that would ultimately expose and reject her manipulative approach. Her calculation had been fundamentally flawed from the beginning. In the days following the photo's publication, she began to notice subtle changes in how her colleagues interacted with her, shifts so small that initially she dismissed them as coincidental. Conversations seemed to end more quickly when she approached, and the easy camaraderie that had previously included her now seemed to flow around her rather than through her. The morning coffee ritual with the mechanic had obviously ended, but she hadn't anticipated how his dignified response would influence the broader workplace dynamic. Other colleagues had witnessed his quiet professionalism in handling the situation, and they had also observed her cavalier attitude toward someone who had shown her genuine kindness. The gas station, which had once felt like fertile ground for her ambitions, now seemed to regard her with a new wariness that she couldn't quite categorize or address. Her attempts to maintain her usual charm and playful banter met with polite but distant responses, creating a professional environment that felt suddenly cold and unwelcoming. The frustration of losing control over social dynamics she had previously managed so skillfully was compounded by her inability to identify exactly what had shifted and why. The cousin's rapid exit from her life delivered the first concrete lesson about the difference between genuine interest and opportunistic conquest, though she was slow to fully grasp its implications. He had pursued her with intensity and apparent passion, making grand gestures and promising exciting adventures that had initially validated her choice to abandon the mechanic's steady courtship. However, once the novelty of their connection wore off and the drama of the initial conquest faded, his attention wandered just as quickly as it had arrived. She found herself dealing with canceled dates, unreturned messages, and the growing realization that she had been valued more as a trophy than as a person worthy of sustained interest. The cousin had achieved what he wanted, proving he could take something his relative valued, and now she was discovering that being someone's victory prize offered no long-term security or satisfaction. Her professional environment became a daily reminder of her miscalculation, as she had to face the mechanic's quiet dignity while processing her own disappointment in private. But the real apprendizado was still to come, as she would soon discover that workplace betrayals create ripple effects that extend far beyond the immediate participants. When she attempted to reconnect with the mechanic after the cousin's predictable disappearance, she encountered a completely transformed dynamic that forced her to confront the full scope of her miscalculations. His response about needing GPS emotional for future interactions wasn't just a clever rejection, it was a declaration that he had fundamentally reassessed her character and found it lacking. The man who had once offered her rides in the rain and accepted her coffee with grateful smiles now looked at her with the kind of distant professionalism reserved for people who had proven themselves untrustworthy. She realized that she had lost not just a romantic prospect, but something far more valuable in a professional environment: the respect and good opinion of a colleague whose character was widely admired. The other workers had observed this entire progression, drawing their own conclusions about someone who would manipulate genuine kindness for personal gain. Her reputation in the workplace had shifted from the new friendly attendant to the woman who played games with people's feelings, a transformation that would affect every future interaction in that environment. The long-term consequences of her actions began to manifest in ways she hadn't anticipated, affecting her professional effectiveness and career prospects within the company. Colleagues who had previously included her in informal networks of communication and support now kept their interactions strictly professional, sharing workplace gossip and opportunities without including her in the circle of trust. The gas station's culture of mutual assistance, where experienced workers helped newcomers learn the ropes and advance their skills, suddenly felt closed to her as people questioned whether investing in her development was wise. She found herself isolated during break times, excluded from the casual conversations that often led to better shift assignments and advancement opportunities. The management, while never addressing the personal drama directly, couldn't help but notice the shift in workplace dynamics and her decreased integration with the team. Her manipulative approach, which had seemed so clever in the short term, was now creating professional obstacles that would take years to overcome. The environment that had once seemed full of possibilities now felt limiting and hostile, a direct result of her own choices and their consequences. The most profound realization came when she understood that she had trained everyone around her to view her with suspicion and maintain emotional distance, creating exactly the opposite of what she had originally sought. Her goal had been to establish influence and create options for advancement, but instead, she had marked herself as someone who couldn't be trusted with confidential information or genuine friendship. The gas station and garage workers had learned to be cautious around her, protecting their personal lives and professional vulnerabilities from someone who had demonstrated a willingness to exploit others' feelings. She had become a case study in how quickly someone can destroy their reputation in a close-knit professional environment, serving as a warning to others about the costs of manipulative behavior. The mechanic's dignified handling of her betrayal had actually enhanced his standing in the workplace, while her actions had marginalized her and limited her future opportunities. The apprendizado she had provided wasn't intentional, but it was valuable. Workplaces built on trust and mutual respect will ultimately reject those who attempt to exploit these qualities for personal gain. Her story became a cautionary tale about the difference between strategic thinking and manipulative behavior, demonstrating that genuine success in professional environments comes from contributing to, rather than exploiting, the culture of trust and collaboration. The gas station and garage complex had always functioned as more than just a workplace. It was a microcosm of human behavior, where genuine character revealed itself through daily interactions and shared challenges. Over the years, the employees had developed an intuitive understanding of each other's personalities, creating an environment where authenticity was valued and pretense was quickly detected. When the drama between the mechanic, the attendant, and the cousin began to unfold, every worker became an unwitting observer of a masterclass in human psychology and professional ethics. The morning shifts brought whispered conversations about the developing situation, while afternoon breaks featured speculation about how various personalities would respond to the growing tension. This professional environment, built on years of mutual trust and shared experiences, provided the perfect laboratory for observing how different approaches to relationships and conflict resolution played out in real time. The workplace became a theater where the contrast between manipulation and integrity would be displayed for all to witness and learn from. The colleagues had initially found entertainment in the romantic developments, creating playful nicknames and engaging in good-natured teasing about the gas station couple. Their innocent enjoyment of the budding romance reflected the healthy workplace culture that celebrated personal happiness and supported colleagues through life's various chapters. However, as the true nature of the situation became apparent, their perspective shifted from amusement to concern, and eventually to admiration for how the mechanic handled an increasingly difficult situation. They watched him maintain his professional standards even as his personal world was being turned upside down, continuing to help customers with the same patience and expertise that had always characterized his work. The environment of mutual support that defined their workplace meant that everyone felt protective of a colleague who had always contributed positively to their shared space. His quiet dignity in the face of betrayal became a source of inspiration for workers who were dealing with their own personal challenges. The frustration and disappointment that could have poisoned the workplace atmosphere was instead transformed into a deeper appreciation for authentic character and professional integrity. What impressed the observers most was how the mechanic's response to betrayal actually elevated the entire workplace culture rather than diminishing it. Instead of creating drama, seeking revenge, or allowing personal pain to affect his professional relationships, he demonstrated a level of emotional maturity that became a new standard for how conflicts should be handled in their environment. His famous response about GPS emotional became legendary, not just for its cleverness, but for how it perfectly captured the wisdom of using internal guidance rather than external manipulation in navigating relationships. Younger employees found themselves adopting his approach to workplace conflicts, learning to respond with dignity rather than reactivity when faced with difficult interpersonal situations. The garage and gas station workers began to understand that true leadership often emerges not from formal authority, but from how someone handles adversity with grace and wisdom. The apprendizado that rippled through the workplace was profound. Authentic character creates positive influence that extends far beyond the immediate situation. But this wasn't just about one person's admirable response. The entire workplace was learning to distinguish between those who contributed to their culture and those who attempted to exploit it. The contrast between the mechanic's behavior and the manipulative tactics of both the attendant and the cousin provided everyone with a clear example of how different approaches to relationships create different outcomes in professional environments. While the attendant had tried to create influence through charm and manipulation, and the cousin had attempted to assert dominance through betrayal, the mechanic had built genuine respect through consistent character and authentic interactions. The workplace observers could see how trust, once broken through manipulative behavior, was extremely difficult to rebuild, while trust earned through consistent integrity continued to compound over time. They witnessed firsthand how the mechanic's reputation was actually enhanced by his graceful handling of the situation, while both the attendant and cousin found their standing in the professional community permanently damaged. The environment that had initially seemed vulnerable to manipulation proved resilient when faced with authentic leadership and principled responses to conflict. Colleagues began to understand that workplaces built on genuine relationships and mutual respect have natural antibodies that eventually reject those who attempt to exploit rather than contribute. The long-term impact on workplace culture was perhaps the most significant outcome of this entire drama, as it established new standards for how personal and professional relationships should intersect. The employees developed a heightened awareness of the difference between genuine connection and calculated manipulation, becoming more skilled at identifying and protecting themselves from those who might attempt to exploit their openness and trust. New informal protocols emerged around sharing personal information and offering support to colleagues, not from suspicion, but from wisdom gained through observation of how that information could be misused. The mechanic's example had taught everyone that maintaining professional integrity during personal crises was not only possible, but could actually strengthen one's position in the workplace community. The gas station and garage became a place where people felt safer being authentic, knowing that genuine character would be recognized and respected, while manipulative behavior would be exposed and rejected. The environment had been strengthened by witnessing how dignity and integrity could triumph over manipulation and betrayal. Years later, new employees would hear the story of the mechanic, the attendant, and the cousin as part of their informal orientation to the workplace culture and values. The tale served as both entertainment and education, illustrating how different approaches to relationships and conflict could create vastly different outcomes in professional settings. The mechanic had become something of a legend, not for any dramatic confrontation or spectacular revenge, but for his quiet demonstration that authentic character and professional integrity could overcome even the most personal betrayals. His story taught newcomers that success in this environment came not from manipulation or political maneuvering, but from genuine contribution to the collective culture of trust and mutual support. The workplace had learned to value and protect the kind of authentic relationships that made their professional environment a positive place to spend their working hours. The legacy of this incident was a stronger, more resilient professional community that understood the difference between surface-level charm and genuine character, creating an environment where confianza and lealtad could flourish, while manipulation and betrayal would always be recognized and rejected. The gas station and garage had witnessed a perfect demonstration of how workplace cultures can either enable or eliminate toxic behavior, depending on how they respond to those who would exploit versus those who would contribute to the collective good. The story of the mechanic's dignified response to workplace betrayal spread far beyond the boundaries of the gas station and garage, becoming a parable that resonated in professional communities throughout the region. Word traveled through the informal networks that connect different businesses, carried by customers who had witnessed the drama unfold and suppliers who had observed the aftermath. Other workplaces began referencing GPS emotional in their own discussions about navigating difficult interpersonal situations, adopting the concept as a metaphor for trusting internal wisdom over external appearances. The tale became particularly popular among family businesses, where the intersection of personal and professional relationships creates similar vulnerabilities to manipulation and betrayal. Managers and business owners found themselves sharing the story during training sessions and team meetings, using it to illustrate the importance of maintaining integrity during conflicts and the long-term benefits of choosing character over convenience. The apprendizado that had emerged from one man's personal crisis was now influencing how entire organizations thought about trust, loyalty, and professional relationships. Professional development seminars and workplace culture workshops began incorporating elements of the mechanic's story into their curricula, recognizing its value as a case study in emotional intelligence and conflict resolution. The narrative provided a perfect example of how individual responses to betrayal could either strengthen or weaken workplace communities, depending on whether the response was driven by wisdom or reactivity. Human resources professionals found the story particularly useful for illustrating how authentic leadership often emerges from how people handle adversity rather than how they manage success. The concept of maintaining professional standards while processing personal disappointment became a benchmark for emotional maturity in workplace settings. Training programs began emphasizing the importance of developing internal guidance systems, the GPS emotional, that could help employees navigate complex interpersonal situations without compromising their integrity or professional relationships. The frustration and disappointment that the mechanic had experienced were universal human emotions, but his response to those emotions provided a template that others could follow in their own challenging situations. The story's impact extended into academic circles, where business schools and organizational psychology programs began using it as a teaching tool for understanding workplace dynamics and leadership development. Professors found that students connected with the narrative's real-world authenticity, seeing themselves reflected in the various characters and situations. The case study illustrated complex concepts about trust building, reputation management, and the long-term consequences of short-term decisions in ways that abstract theories could not. Graduate students studying organizational behavior wrote papers analyzing how the mechanic's response had influenced the broader workplace culture and examining the psychology behind the manipulative behaviors of the other participants. The story became a framework for discussing how professional environments can either encourage or discourage authentic relationships, and how individual actions can have ripple effects throughout entire organizational systems. The lealtad and mutual respect that characterized the gas station and garage culture became a model for how other workplaces could build resilient communities that would naturally reject exploitative behavior while nurturing genuine collaboration. Local business associations and professional networking groups began incorporating discussions about emotional navigation into their regular meetings, recognizing that the technical skills traditionally emphasized in professional development were insufficient for dealing with complex interpersonal challenges. The mechanic's story provided a concrete example of how maintaining integrity during personal crises could actually enhance rather than damage one's professional reputation and relationships. Entrepreneurs and small business owners found particular value in understanding how family dynamics and romantic entanglements could affect workplace culture, using the narrative to develop policies and practices that would protect their organizations from similar disruptions. The concept of using internal guidance systems rather than external manipulation became a cornerstone of ethical business practices discussions. Professional mentorship programs began emphasizing the importance of developing the kind of character that could withstand betrayal while maintaining dignity and professional effectiveness. But the story's influence was expanding beyond business circles, reaching into personal development and relationship counseling contexts, where the lessons about trust and authenticity had even broader applications. The narrative found its way into relationship counseling sessions and personal development workshops, where therapists and coaches used it to help clients understand the difference between authentic connection and manipulative behavior. The story provided clear examples of how different approaches to relationships created different outcomes, not just in professional settings, but in all areas of life. Couples therapy sessions referenced the mechanic's GPS emotional concept as a tool for developing internal wisdom about partner selection and relationship navigation. Self-help groups and personal growth seminars adopted the story as a metaphor for the importance of maintaining integrity, even when others choose to act without conscience or consideration. The tale became particularly popular in discussions about recovering from betrayal as it offered hope that dignity and character could ultimately triumph over manipulation and deception. Support groups for people dealing with workplace harassment or romantic betrayal found comfort in the mechanic's example, seeing that it was possible to emerge from painful situations with enhanced rather than diminished standing in one's community. The aprendizado that had begun in a simple workplace conflict was now helping people across diverse situations understand the power of authentic response to inauthentic behavior. The lasting legacy of the mechanic's story became its demonstration that ordinary people facing common challenges could create extraordinary examples of character and wisdom that would influence others for years to come. The narrative proved that heroism often looks like quiet dignity rather than dramatic confrontation, and that the most powerful responses to betrayal involve maintaining one's own integrity rather than seeking revenge or validation. Professional communities, academic institutions, and personal development organizations had all found value in a story that illustrated timeless principles about trust, character, and authentic relationships in accessible, relatable terms. The gas station and garage where it all began continued to operate with enhanced awareness of their role as a model workplace culture, knowing that their daily interactions and responses to challenges were contributing to a broader understanding of how professional environments could nurture human dignity and authentic connection. The mechanic himself remained largely unaware of his story's widespread influence, continuing to work with the same steady character that had created the original example. His unconscious demonstration that confianza once earned through authentic behavior creates influence that extends far beyond immediate circumstances had become a teaching tool for anyone seeking to understand how individual integrity can create positive change in professional and personal communities. The simple act of choosing dignity over drama in response to workplace betrayal had created ripples that would continue to influence how people thought about relationships, character, and professional conduct for generations to come. The months that followed the infamous betrayal at the gas station revealed how a single incident could become a transformative force that reshaped not just individual perspectives, but entire approaches to professional and personal relationships. The mechanic discovered that his dignified response had earned him something far more valuable than romantic success, a reputation for character that opened doors and created opportunities he had never imagined possible. Customers began specifically requesting his services. Word-of-mouth recommendations increased dramatically, and other businesses in the area started approaching him with partnership proposals and job offers. His authentic handling of a painful situation had demonstrated qualities that employers and business partners actively sought: emotional maturity, professional integrity, and the ability to maintain standards under pressure. The frustration and disappointment that could have destroyed his confidence had instead become the foundation for unprecedented personal and professional growth. The ambiente professional that had witnessed his crisis response now treated him with a level of respect that transcended his job title or years of experience. His story had proven that genuine character, when tested by adversity, often emerges stronger and more influential than before. The attendant's journey through the aftermath of her manipulative choices provided an equally instructive lesson about the long-term consequences of prioritizing short-term gains over sustainable relationship building. Her isolation within the workplace community had forced her to confront fundamental questions about her approach to relationships and professional interactions. The charm and manipulation tactics that had served her in previous environments proved counterproductive in a culture built on authentic connection and mutual trust. She found herself struggling with loneliness and professional stagnation, realizing that her approach had created exactly the opposite of what she had hoped to achieve. The process of rebuilding her reputation required genuine change, rather than improved manipulation techniques, forcing her to develop authentic relationship skills for the first time. The aprendizado was painful but necessary. Workplaces that value confianza and lealtad will eventually expose and reject inauthentic behavior, regardless of how cleverly it's disguised. Her eventual growth came from understanding that genuine influence and security could only be built through authentic contribution to the collective well-being of her professional community. The cousin's experience illustrated perhaps the most tragic outcome of choosing betrayal over loyalty, as he discovered that some actions create consequences that extend far beyond the immediate situation. His temporary victory in winning the attendant had cost him his place in a family business that represented generations of shared history and mutual support. The shame of facing relatives who had witnessed his calculated betrayal kept him away from family gatherings and business meetings, creating a self-imposed exile that grew more entrenched over time. Professional opportunities within the family network dried up as his reputation for untrustworthiness spread through their extended business and social circles. The cousin had traded decades of family trust and professional security for a brief romantic conquest that ultimately provided neither satisfaction nor lasting benefit. His story became a cautionary tale about how betraying those closest to us can lead to profound isolation and loss of the very things that provide life with meaning and security. The ambiente professional that had once welcomed him now viewed him as a liability, someone whose presence reminded everyone of the importance of maintaining boundaries between personal desires and family loyalties. The broader workplace community experienced its own transformation, as the incident became a catalyst for developing more sophisticated approaches to managing personal and professional relationships. New informal protocols emerged around confidentiality, with employees becoming more thoughtful about what personal information they shared and with whom. The culture didn't become suspicious or closed, but rather more discerning, better able to distinguish between those who deserved trust and those who might exploit it. Training in emotional intelligence and conflict resolution became more valued, as everyone recognized the importance of developing skills for navigating complex interpersonal situations with dignity and wisdom. The workplace implemented subtle but important changes in how personal dramas were handled, ensuring that professional standards were maintained even when emotions ran high. The confianza that characterized their culture became more resilient, built on deeper understanding of what authentic relationships looked like and how to protect them from those who might attempt manipulation or exploitation. The entire community had gained wisdom about human nature and professional dynamics that would serve them well in future challenges. Years later, the mechanic would often reflect on how a moment of personal betrayal had become the foundation for the most significant growth period of his life, both professionally and personally. The GPS emotional concept that had emerged from his response to the crisis had become his guiding principle for all major decisions, helping him navigate subsequent challenges with confidence and clarity. His enhanced reputation had led to business ownership opportunities, meaningful romantic relationships built on mutual respect, and a level of community influence that he could never have achieved through manipulation or political maneuvering. The painful experience had taught him to trust his internal guidance system over external appearances, a skill that proved invaluable in all areas of life. His story had inspired others to approach their own challenges with similar dignity and integrity, creating a ripple effect of positive influence that extended far beyond his original workplace. The frustration and disappointment he had experienced during the original betrayal now seemed like necessary preparation for the wisdom and character that had emerged from the experience. The ambiente professional where it all began continued to benefit from his example, as new employees learned about authentic leadership and conflict resolution through his ongoing presence and approach. The ultimate lesson that emerged from this complex workplace drama was that betrayal, while painful, can become the catalyst for developing the kind of character and wisdom that creates lasting positive influence in both professional and personal spheres. The mechanic's dignified response had demonstrated that maintaining integrity during crisis situations often leads to outcomes far better than what might have been achieved through manipulation or revenge. The attendant's eventual growth showed that even those who initially choose exploitative approaches can learn to build authentic relationships when they experience the consequences of their actions. The cousin's isolation illustrated the tragic cost of betraying family trust for temporary gratification, serving as a warning about the importance of considering long-term consequences before making impulsive decisions. The workplace community had become stronger and wiser through witnessing all these different outcomes, developing enhanced abilities to recognize authentic character and protect their culture from those who might attempt to exploit it. The story became a testament to the power of authentic response to inauthentic behavior, proving that confianza, lealtad, and professional integrity could triumph over manipulation and betrayal when supported by a community that valued these qualities. The aprendizado that began with personal crisis had evolved into organizational wisdom that would influence how that professional environment handled challenges for generations to come, creating a legacy of dignity and authentic relationship building that extended far beyond the original participants. The phrase GPS emotional became more than just a clever comeback. It evolved into a philosophical framework that transformed how people in that professional environment approached all their interpersonal relationships. The mechanic's spontaneous response had captured something profound about the difference between external navigation systems that rely on others' directions and internal guidance systems that trust one's own wisdom and experience. Colleagues began using the term in various contexts, referring to their emotional GPS, when making decisions about workplace friendships, romantic interests, and even career choices. The concept resonated because it acknowledged that just as physical navigation requires reliable guidance systems, emotional navigation through complex human relationships required equally sophisticated internal tools. The ambiente professional buzzed with discussions about developing and trusting these internal guidance systems, creating a new vocabulary for talking about intuition, wisdom, and authentic decision-making. The frustration that many workers had experienced in their own relationship challenges suddenly had a framework for understanding and resolution. What had begun as a personal response to betrayal had become a shared language for discussing emotional intelligence and authentic living. The legendary status of the response grew from its perfect encapsulation of hard-won wisdom, delivered with both humor and dignity, creating a moment that colleagues would reference for years to come. Unlike typical workplace comebacks that rely on anger or sarcasm, the GPS emotional comment demonstrated how intelligence and emotional maturity could create responses that were both effective and elevating. The phrase became shorthand for the kind of sophisticated thinking that could transform painful experiences into learning opportunities while maintaining one's integrity and professional reputation. New employees were often told the story as part of their informal orientation, learning not just about workplace culture, but about approaches to conflict resolution that could enhance rather than damage their professional relationships. The mechanic had unknowingly created a teaching moment that would influence how an entire generation of workers thought about responding to betrayal and disappointment. The aprendizado embedded in those three words, GPS emotional, contained layers of meaning about self-reliance, wisdom development, and the importance of trusting internal guidance over external manipulation. The phrase's adoption throughout the broader professional community revealed how desperately people had been seeking a framework for understanding and articulating their experiences with manipulative relationships and authentic connection. Business owners began incorporating emotional GPS concepts into their leadership training programs, recognizing that technical skills were insufficient for managing the complex human dynamics that determined organizational success. The metaphor provided an accessible way to discuss sophisticated concepts about emotional intelligence, boundary setting, and authentic relationship building without the academic jargon that often made such topics feel abstract or irrelevant. Human resources departments found the framework particularly useful for helping employees navigate workplace relationships while maintaining professional standards and personal integrity. The concept bridges the gap between personal development and professional effectiveness, showing how internal wisdom could enhance rather than compete with career advancement and workplace success. The confianza that employees developed in their own judgment created more resilient workplace cultures that were naturally resistant to manipulation and exploitation. What made the GPS emotional concept particularly powerful was how it reframed relationship challenges from external problems to internal opportunities for growth and wisdom development. Instead of seeing betrayal or manipulation as things that happened to them, people began understanding these experiences as information that could improve their navigation systems for future relationships. The mechanic's response had demonstrated that the goal wasn't to become cynical or closed off, but rather to become more skilled at recognizing authentic connection versus calculated manipulation. Workers throughout the region began developing more sophisticated approaches to workplace relationships, learning to trust their instincts while remaining open to genuine connection and collaboration. The framework provided a way to process disappointment and frustration constructively, transforming negative experiences into enhanced wisdom and better decision-making capabilities. The ambiente professional that had witnessed the original exchange became a laboratory for testing and refining these concepts as employees experimented with trusting their internal guidance systems in various professional and personal contexts. The long-term impact of the GPS emotional philosophy extended far beyond romantic relationships, influencing how people approached career decisions, business partnerships, and even parenting approaches. The concept provided a framework for understanding that authentic success required developing and trusting internal wisdom, rather than relying on external validation or manipulation tactics. Entrepreneurs began using the framework to evaluate potential business partners and investment opportunities, recognizing that their internal guidance systems often detected red flags that traditional due diligence might miss. Parents started teaching their children about developing emotional GPS systems, helping the next generation understand the difference between authentic relationships and manipulative behavior. The phrase had become a cultural touchstone for discussions about integrity, wisdom, and authentic living in an increasingly complex social and professional landscape. The lealtad to one's own internal guidance system became seen as a form of self-respect that enhanced rather than limited one's ability to build meaningful relationships with others. Years after the original incident, the mechanic would occasionally encounter people who had heard his story and adopted the GPS emotional concept in their own lives, often with transformative results. Strangers would approach him at community events to share how the framework had helped them navigate difficult divorces, toxic workplace situations, or challenging family dynamics. The phrase had taken on a life of its own, spreading through social media, professional development circles, and personal growth communities far beyond the original gas station and garage environment. Academic researchers began studying the phenomenon, examining how a single authentic response to betrayal had created a viral concept that influenced thousands of people's approaches to relationships and decision-making. The mechanic remained humble about his accidental contribution to popular psychology, understanding that the phrase's power came not from his cleverness, but from its authentic emergence from real experience and genuine wisdom. The ambiente professional, where it all began, continued to benefit from the enhanced emotional intelligence and authentic relationship skills that the concept had fostered among employees. The GPS emotional had become more than just a memorable comeback. It was a legacy of how authentic responses to inauthentic behavior could create positive influence that extended far beyond the original situation, providing tools and frameworks that would help people navigate relationships with greater wisdom and integrity for generations to come. If this resonated with you, and you want to continue developing your emotional intelligence and professional wisdom, make sure to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. We're building a community of professionals who refuse to be victims of workplace manipulation and are committed to creating authentic, trust-based relationships that actually last. Your next level of professional success is waiting on the other side of this decision.